President Trump officially kicks off his 2020 re-election bid tomorrow.
The Trump campaign building momentum, his re-election operation raising $105 million in the second quarter.
President Trump is building a campaign that is dramatically greater than his 2016 operation.
Is there anything cooler than being at a Trump rally? Can you believe it? Less than a year it begins, November 3rd this time. We had that great date. Oh boy, November 8th, remember? Was there ever a day like that? When they were saying how sophisticated Hillary Clinton's campaign was. She's got the finest computer technology in the world. I had somebody that was a lot better, and his name was Brad Parscale, and he's here with us. Campaign.
The man who is tasked with re-electing President Trump in 2020, his campaign manager, Brad Parscale.
I was going to say, I think we're going to talk on Wednesday in D.C.
Look at this guy. This is for
Danish TV.
Danish TV.
I'm Swedish.
See, Swedish. Look at this big man.
Yeah.
Then we're mortal enemies.
No.
To understand where Brad Parscale comes from and what he does, you have to look back to 2016.
New development tonight on Cambridge Analytica, the firm that worked for the Trump campaign.
Now accused of using the private data of tens of millions of Facebook users to directly target potential American voters.
We collected data on about 50 million people. Now I'm like, yes, please. Thank you, Data Santa.
Selling the ability to manipulate people through trickery, through deception, and through manipulation.
How did reality TV star Donald Trump just get elected president?
He was someone without scruples.
This little-known company has become such a powerful tool in politics.
I think he scared some people.
And now Donald Trump is paying them $5 million.
I said, I don't like this Cambridge stuff. I'm not sure I like you.
You've even used the term weaponized data.
They need to be investigated for that.
Everything. Everything that you could possibly see of as a nefarious force, Cambridge Analytica had hung on it.
Let's do this, because you have 40 minutes maybe now. But I talk fast. President calls or Jared calls. That's the only two reasons I'll get up, right? Why don't you two sit? They're going to be in every... they're not in the shop. They go around. They're going to mess the light up.
How did you get your current job?
My current job is campaign manager for President Trump. That's a long story. That would take more than an hour to get through. I've worked for the Trump family now for almost 10 years, and I was the digital director and head of all kind of media for the 2016 campaign.
This guy got Trump elected, og så ser vi ham, Brad Parscale, som nu skal lede den nye præsidentkampagne.
Because I'm an evil creature.
Brad Parscale was a local web designer in San Antonio, Texas. One of the businesses that he ended up doing work for was the Trump Organization. He had developed a website for Trump Winery. And the reason the Trumps liked him was he was cheap, and they saw him as incredibly loyal and incredibly hungry. I think he quoted $1,500 for it, of building the first Trump for President website in early 2015 when Trump announced.
On February 21st, 2015, I received an email that Donald Trump's thinking about running for president. Do you want to help? I didn't have any political experience, and I replied back, yes. And that contract started with Just building a splash page and building up an email sign-up form and just some very basic stuff.
Now it's time for the American people to take back their future. We are in a competition with the world, and I want America to win.
At the beginning of the campaign, my job was just managing the website. Jared called me one day on the phone and said, "What do you think we should do?" I just right there on the phone pitched him for an hour why I was the right guy to advertise and do everything on Facebook. And the next day, Jared put me in charge of all the advertising. We spent almost 50% of our budget in digital marketing. We considerably spent money on Facebook.
The Trump campaign did not have a network of traditional field offices. He did not have staffers who were organizing voter contact, knocking on doors, making phone calls. It was him talking to as many people as possible.
I want the primaries to keep going, but everybody's out. I'm the only one left. That's okay, right?
And then at this point in 2016, where the campaign decides to be more aggressive online, all the digital responsibility fell to Parscale.
We knew how we could put those pieces together by using digital marketing and social media, which allowed us to operate on a much smaller budget. '20 is the Rolls-Royce compared to the Chevy Camaro that we had in 2016.
Well, hello, Kentucky. President Trump on Air Force One has landed. He is en route. We got a lot to do here, which is win 4 more years for President Trump. So it's going to take lots of volunteers and a lot of people helping to make that possible. So what I need everyone to do tonight is make sure you do one thing, one homework thing for me, okay? Pull out your phone and dial Trump to 88022. That's how you get connected to us. That's how you know how to volunteer and participate.
These rallies, we get data from. So everybody that comes, we're able to connect with them. Usually about 80% will get their cell phone numbers. Pretty soon we're gonna have app technology and other things, we'll get almost 100%. We know everything about every person that's doing everything that comes. From that, we can create data models, and artificial intelligence kind of spits out who they are, income levels, what they think about, what they want, what are the issues that are driving them. So this is a way for us to kind of build an intelligence around what is a Trump supporter, what's the core of our base, and then work our way out. By understanding that, we can understand also what drives them to show up to vote.
If I'm concerned that my personal data is being used to manipulate me,
nothing's manipulating you.
To understand what's going on now in American politics in 2020, there's no one more important to know than Brad Parscale. Who he is, what drives him, what he cares about. And to understand Brad Parscale, you have to know what happened in 2016.
It's great being back here. I want women to earn equal pay for the work we do.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States.
Hvordan kunne alle målinger, alle medier og meningsdannere tage så grueligt fejl?
Donald Trump har betalt selskapet Cambridge Analytica flere millioner dollar for drahjelp i valgkampen. Det kan ha vært nøkkelen til Trumps seier.
Her sitter Trumps digitale tankelesere.
We're going to spend the next 20 minutes in the company of the man who, according to some, is responsible for the election of Donald Trump.
We've talked to some experts who suggested that maybe it was your work for Mr. Trump that may have won him the election. What are your thoughts on that?
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and a privilege to be here in Hamburg to speak to you about the evolution taking place in marketing and communications, particularly in conjunction with some of the work that we contributed to Donald Trump's presidential campaign.
Your name and occupation, please?
Julian Wheatland, management consultant, formerly Chief Operating Officer and latterly Chief Executive Officer of Cambridge Analytica. Alexander Nix started a joint venture with some US investors specifically to target the North American market and specifically the political market in the USA.
I look at the advertising industry that fundamentally has not changed for 50 or 60 years. I see an industry that needs to pivot or frankly die.
If you're a provider of election services, then there isn't a more attractive market. And that joint venture was called Cambridge Analytica. He rang me up and he said that the business was really taking off and he needed some help with the financial management of the business and could I lend a hand.
Blanket advertising, the idea that 100 million people receive the same piece of direct mail, the same television advert, the same digital advert, is dead. Today, communication is becoming ever increasingly targeted. You'll only receive adverts that not only are on the products and services, or in the case of elections, issues that you care about most, but that have been nuanced in order to reflect the way you see the world.
Cambridge Analytica hit upon something which was genuinely novel and innovative, and nobody had done it before. To initially look at Facebook data, but then latterly survey people to try and understand what their personality types were. You could then start to tailor communications for individuals. That was psychographics. This was the first time that had been done, and that propelled the company into the front seat of US politics.
Please welcome to the stage Alexander Nix, Chief Executive Officer, Cambridge Analytica.
It's easy to forget that only 18 months ago, Senator Cruz was one of the less popular candidates seeking nomination, and certainly one of the more vilified. Yet come May 2016, Senator Cruz was the only serious contender, the only credible threat to the phenomenon Donald Trump. So how did he do this?
I think the first time I heard about Cambridge Analytica was reading a piece in Politico after the Cruz campaign's first financial disclosure reports came out.
I believe in the power of millions of courageous conservatives rising up to reignite the promise of America. And that is why today I am announcing that I'm running for President of the United States.
They were paying a company that I don't think many people in American politics had heard of a large sum of money.
The meeting was here at the Hyatt
in Washington, D.C., and it was really the initial meeting for the campaign team. It was the first time that I had the opportunity to meet in person any of the representatives from Cambridge. And we went through every aspect of the campaign, how it was going to be organized. They sold several pieces of software, the most famous of which being Rip-On. And that was the first time I had actually had any interaction with Nix himself. Everybody believed that he had sold something that was going to make the difference in the campaign. As you can see from the literature that Cambridge produced on Rip-On, it was supposed to be a voter management software. In other words, it would track every interaction with a voter. And when a volunteer went to a door, let's say in Iowa, and Mr. Smith came to the door, the volunteer would know everything there was to know about Mr. Smith from the voter file.
This is a data dashboard that we prepared for the Cruz campaign for the Iowa caucus.
The next Republican nominee and the next president of the United States is not going to be chosen by the media.
I thought I knew every firm that had the capacity to go to work for a Republican presidential candidate. And so I started digging into this firm. As I learned that it was a firm based in the UK, that really intensified my interest. I got in touch with folks at Cambridge Analytica, and I said, I'm interested in writing a piece for Bloomberg about you.
And then what?
Somewhat to my surprise, they told me that they'd be willing to have me come and visit their office in London. I went in the morning, like a block off of Piccadilly, and incredibly inconspicuous building. I sat down in a conference room where there were probably 8 or 10 folks from Cambridge Analytica there, including Alex Nix. They're putting a presentation on the screen, and they're showing me my personality profile. This was their party trick. We can tell you what your personality traits are.
Hold on.
Yeah.
How had they gotten this data about you?
What they did have was a lot of data that any political actor in the United States now can buy from a political data vendor. You have information about my neighborhood from the census, and from that you can infer I'm probably white. I probably have a college degree. I'm probably single, and I'm probably a renter because of the household profiles in my neighborhood. And that's the core sort of political, geographic data that exists for every voter in the United States. And then there's this consumer data.
They had consumer information about you.
Yes, and everybody has it. So, you know, in my wallet, this is my local supermarket in California. Every time I buy, you know, a bushel of grapes or a can of soup, they keep a record of it because I want to get a discount. I have one from my pharmacy. I get a discount, they get information, they put me in some category of people who buy male hygiene goods. They sell that onward. And then all these credit cards, they say he's an international traveler because he bought more than 3 plane tickets last year. He must care about hotels because he got a special hotel loyalty card. And all of these things are creating data that these companies make a lot of money selling onward to other companies. This is basically what micro-targeting is. Everybody in politics has access to this. What they choose to do with it is the real test.
Der er vendt op og ned på den amerikanske præsidentvalgkamp. Hos republikanerne var Donald Trump spået en sejr, men han tabte klart til Ted Cruz fra Texas.
The fact that we won, I think, was a big shock to a lot of people. It was a very exciting night. I'll never forget Ted standing up on the stage.
God bless the great state of Iowa.
It was probably a top 10 life moment kind of thing.
Tonight is a victory for the grassroots.
Ted Cruz employed our data, our behavioral insights, to drive not just his TV and his digital, but his field operations, his get out the vote, his voter persuasion. And all of this meant that he started from a base of less than 5% and had a very slow and steady but firm rise to above 35%.
There was a lot of interest. At one point, we were front page on the Washington Post for the work that we were doing with the Cruz campaign. We were talking about the innovative techniques and technology that we were deploying to try and secure work with other campaigns.
For a moment, it seemed like Cruz was going to be the Republican alternative to Trump. That didn't last that long.
I USA har mangemilliardæren Donald Trump nu for alvor kurs mod posten som republikanernes præsidentkandidat. Og samtidig har hans eneste reelle udfordrer, Ted Cruz, trukket sig.
Donald Trump er nu eneste mand på banen i kampen mod Hillary Clinton.
Once Trump was selected as the nominee, then our work for the Cruz campaign stopped immediately.
Well, one day, I believe it was in August of 2015, my Cambridge Analytica project manager comes into my office and tells me that he has just resigned to Cambridge and he's leaving. And the reason for that is he's been lying to me and he can't lie to me anymore. Ripon doesn't exist, it will never exist, and they've been taking our monthly fee and using it for development, and then whenever the development time is used up, they would stop until the next month. It never existed.
The technology promise that we made to the Cruz campaign was heavily oversold and was a disappointment to the campaign when they realized that we weren't able to deliver it.
At this point, Cambridge just wants to get into the Trump campaign in any way possible. It's clear that Trump has a rabid base of supporters. They need some sort of data program to identify those supporters, mostly online. That was the point of entry.
It was fairly quickly after Trump got the nomination that they reached out to us and we got engaged to do data analytics for the campaign via Brad Parscale's company.
I never knew who Cambridge Analytica was until I received some email saying you should look at these guys. You run an operation this big, everybody wants to sell you something. Aleksandr Nix is the first time I meet him, and Matiskowski showed up and tried to pitch me on their data program and operations. The pitch was, we have all this data points, tools that were revolutionary that could make winning the general election easier. My initial aspect was very skeptical. I needed smart data scientists. I kept coming back and hearing about this guy named Matiskowski. They're sitting there in the chairs, and I just told Aleksandr Nix, I don't like you. I said, I don't like this Cambridge stuff. I'm not sure I like you, but I like him.
Why did you not like Aleksandr Nix?
I don't know what it was. We couldn't be from any two different types, but I really needed Matiskowski. Aleksandr agreed under one condition, that he was paid directly so Cambridge Analytica would be on the FEC report. Which meant he could tell the world he was working for Donald Trump for this presidential election.
It was a hugely exciting time. Now we were working on the nominees campaign for the general election. If you aspire to provide election services, then this is the prestige contract to get, bar none. We felt like we were at the center of the world, and there was press interest and media interest in what we were doing.
Aleksandr Nix is the CEO behind the elite brains at Cambridge Analytica. They are psychological profilers, crunching away 5,000 pieces of data about every American adult.
And we were the source of stories, and we could see the brand value that we thought we were building.
This little-known company has become such a powerful tool in politics.
We engaged in a huge amount of PR and outreach to the media because we had a story that we needed to tell. We needed to tell people, look how clever what we're doing is.
And now Donald Trump is paying them $5 million in September alone in the hope their profiling will take him all the way to the White House.
I started paying attention to Cambridge Analytica just a little while before the 2016 election.
De sidste mange meningsmålinger har vist, at står kampen mellem Trump og Clinton, så bliver det Clinton, der vinder.
The Trump data operation, including Cambridge Analytica, were making these outlandish claims about just how powerful their tools were. That all of the polls were wrong, everything was going to be different this time because of psychographic marketing and perfectly tailored Facebook ads that they claimed they had and no one had had before.
So on election night, we organized a party and watched the results come in. We all know that we were associated with the Trump campaign.
Data from Cambridge Analytica.
It was exciting.
Trump's election campaign, as well as other Republican candidates.
President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Total og overvældende sejr til Donald Trump, der bliver USA's næste præsident.
On election night, when I stood on stage next to the president, it's worth every day of sleeping on the floor and not sleeping for days and everything you fight for. It's because it's one of the very few things you fight with your soul as well as your mind, as well as your sweat and tears. I'll tell you, when you win, it feels really damn good, though. That one moment, you know you did something to change the direction of the country for the better, for what you believe in.
Once he won, there was a celebration. It was a job well done as far as we were concerned. That was very exciting. That was very exciting. Clearly, this was likely to be huge for Cambridge Analytica. The morning after the election, the press was on fire with Cambridge Analytica, this company that had pulled off this unexpected election victory for Trump. The phone did not stop ringing. We had the biggest brand names in the world ringing us up, asking to come in and talk to us about our techniques. And all we had to do was divvy up the inbound calls. It was like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. It's a salesman's dream.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable colleagues, it's my privilege to speak to you today about the power of big data and psychographics in the electoral process.
Aleksandr Nix was in cloud heaven. He was traveling around the world. He was speaking. He'd get off a plane in Australia and he'd be recognized as the guy from Cambridge Analytica.
This was really the first truly data-driven election. It was the first time that the power of big data, predictive analytics were unleashed.
And you can't buy the brand recognition that Cambridge Analytica had at that time. And we soaked it up, we lapped it up.
We were an attractive proposition and had collected a huge amount of voter data and research and had built an entire...
Aleksandr overclaimed some of the things that we could do.
By having hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans undertake this survey, we were able to form a model to predict the personality of every single adult in the United States of America.
I think he scared some people.
It raises troubling questions about whether, in the age of big data, our democracy is open to manipulation.
You're a member of the British Parliament. It's fair to say that you've taken an active interest in Cambridge Analytica. Why?
Well, on the committee, we just started our inquiry into disinformation and fake news. So I'd heard the company name Cambridge Analytica. They worked for the Cruz campaign and then worked for Donald Trump. But as we got into the inquiry, we saw that Cambridge Analytica had really been developing these techniques over probably the 2 years or so prior to that.
Mr. Collins, you'll have plenty of opportunity, as will all the committee, to ask me as many questions as you want, but I have to insist on delivering the rest of this statement.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nix, it's not your place to insist on anything in front of this committee. It was about understanding different segments of people and being able to target them with different messages in campaigns. Just simply by completing a psychological profile survey, which Cambridge Analytica had placed through a developer on Facebook. But you also had access to all the Facebook data of the person that filled it in, and the Facebook data of all of their friends as well. The big question we asked him was about whether they had acquired Facebook data, and specifically we asked him about their work with Dr. Kogan.
Politikere og myndigheder kræver svar efter beskyldninger om, at millioner af brugere har fået stjålet personlige oplysninger fra deres Facebook-profiler.
Et dataselskab, der arbejdede for Donald Trumps præsidentkampagne, efterforskes nu for at have stjålet de personfølsomme oplysninger via en app.
Aleksandr Kogan, the original bad guy who took the data from Facebook and sold it to Cambridge Analytica, the political firm.
Actually, mommy, toothpaste. No bathroom shots. Keep it decent.
Good morning and welcome to this further evidence session as part of our inquiry into disinformation and fake news. We're delighted to welcome Dr. Aleksandr Kogan to give evidence to the committee this morning. Firstly, I think with regards to what's been called the Facebook data breach, for which you've, Dr. Kogan, been seen as a central player.
Let's suit up.
In some ways, people sought to portray you as some sort of rogue operator.
This has been a very painful experience because when I entered into all of this, Facebook was a close ally, and I was thinking this would be helpful to my academic career and my relationship with Facebook. It has very clearly done the complete opposite.
Hey Alex, can you briefly explain to us where you're going, what you're doing today?
So I'm going to go to the Grand Hyatt Hotel, and I'm going to do a talk to about 1,000 insurance professionals who are really interested in how they're going to insure against the next Cambridge Analytica. And I'm going to try to explain to them that they can't.
But do you worry about your own credibility?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's very easy to argue I have personal incentives to downplay the whole thing. But as I will tell the audience, I'm a perennial optimist, so I'm still going to try. I worked as a University of Cambridge lecturer for 6 years and did big data and psychology. This is one of the top universities in the world. This was my dream job. I was young, ambitious, and I'm like, what can we do? What can we find? And I started hearing people doing work with Facebook. And that was really interesting because Facebook is this incredibly rich collection of social interactions. A PhD student in my department came and said, like, hey, I've been consulting for this company called SEL. SEL was going to be doing a project for the US elections. And we realized there was an opportunity for a big data collection because I had been using the Facebook API a lot for my research, where I had learned that, hey, Facebook actually has this door where they will give you data about their users. We recruited 250,000 people who clicked my login button authorized my Facebook app, and filled out a bunch of surveys. But from that, Facebook not only gave me data about the user, but also about their friends. We collected data on about 50 million people.
They were using this Facebook data to create psychological profiles of people so they could understand what is it that would make them frightened, what is it that would make them go and vote, what is it that would stop them voting for someone else, and that you could manipulate people's behavior in that way. It showed the sorts of people that Cambridge Analytica were. Here was someone, without scruples.
We were really only working for the Trump campaign for 3 months, and that was no time to build up any useful psychographic models. We thought that Trump wasn't going to win. Having gone out and told the press how great we were prior to Trump actually getting elected, then everybody looked to us and said, wow, it must have been Cambridge Analytica that got him unexpectedly elected.
Everything that Cambridge Analytica did to build itself up as a unique player in American politics, the sort of James Bond-style mystique of being called Cambridge Analytica, ended up making it this very easy cinematic villain.
That was all a lot of pressure to take, and it was becoming more and more painful. And then Chris Wiley hit the press.
Den tidligere ansatte i analysefirmaet Cambridge Analytica, Christopher Wiley, stod frem og fortalte, hvordan op imod 87 millioner brugeres data fra Facebook var blevet misbrugt.
Til at bombardere amerikanske vælgere med super målrettede valgreklamer for Donald Trump.
I think what's really important for people to understand is that this company misappropriated data of upwards of 50 million people from Facebook. They misused that data. That data was processed by psychologists who were going back and forth between London and Russia, who were also working on projects in Russia for Russians.
Folks were looking for stuff. They were looking for more juice to publish on. Crazy things started to happen. I got accused of maybe being a Russian spy.
Whilst you were at University of Cambridge, you also worked at the University of St. Petersburg, didn't you?
Yes, I had a loose affiliation there.
Is it possible at all, because maybe if you travelled with a laptop that contained data and information, the people in Russia could have gained access to, benefited from work you were doing for SCL?
You don't travel with this data set in your laptop. This is too much data. I lived on a server in Portland. I am Aleksandr Kogan, and I am not a Russian spy. I was born in a tiny Soviet republic named Moldova, and when I was the ripe old age of 7, I immigrated to Brooklyn, New York. But this became, Alex is getting funded by the Russian government.
So, you don't know anything about the Harley Street address?
I'm legitimately surprised by that.
Yeah, it's because it's used by a lot of companies, shell companies, some of which have been used for money laundering for Russian oligarchs. Did you know that?
I did not. I'm unfortunately not a Russian oligarch.
Have you met any Russian oligarchs?
I have not. Look, most people in Russia are like most people in the United Kingdom. They're not involved in spycraft. They're just living lives. So, the Cambridge Analytica method goes like this. Cambridge Analytica had 5,000 data points on every American. And then they built highly accurate personality models. And then this guy wins the presidency. Folks are getting really upset. Maybe Cambridge Analytica, with its highly accurate personality models delivered from all these data points, was how Trump was able to, break the free world. So that's kind of the story.
Everyone thinks Cambridge Analytica stole Facebook data, gave it to the Trump campaign. Yeah. The Trump campaign used it to win the election.
Absolutely zero. It's just never happened. I didn't really know that Aleksandr was out telling everybody that he won the campaign until someone sent me a YouTube video of him in Australia or something on stage.
If you're targeting audiences purely on demographics, you might end up sending the same message to people who really have very different worldviews. We might want to use psychographics to target and message them differently.
I think I showed Jared and a couple other people, and we all just started laughing because he just made up stuff we never did. The psychographics conversation was one day, and I say, hell no, that sounds stupid, and we never talked about it again. That one conversation literally turns into this huge, gigantic thing where it was the entire mentality behind the campaign.
As far as the Facebook data is concerned, a lot of work was done to try and use that. That was largely unsuccessful. It didn't stop Aleksandr going out and telling people it was part of the data that we had.
Big data is really the aggregation of as many data points that you can possibly get your hands on to understand exactly what messages each specific group within a target audience need to hear.
All the claims about being able to know what people are going to do before they know what they're going to do, it's nonsense.
This is a company that really took fake news to the next level by powering it with algorithms.
We ended up being accused of pretty much every sin that everybody could think of in the world. I believe you can find articles online that identify me personally as the secret link between the Russians and the Trump campaign.
Everything. Everything that you could possibly see of as a nefarious force entering, shaping American political life, Cambridge Analytica had hung on it.
Good morning.
Now let me introduce to you our keynote, the real reason why you're here today. Please help me with providing Dr. Kogan a very warm welcome this morning.
Thank you so much. All right, good morning, everybody. I'll be talking to you guys today about Cambridge Analytica. How do I personally fit into this entire mess? I was the scientist involved in this. I collected the data, I built the personality models. I have had to testify in front of Parliament, so here's me at Parliament. I've testified in front of the US Senate. I've really struggled of convincing people of the facts, but I am a perennial optimist, so I'm still gonna fucking try, so bear with me. And yeah, I got to curse at a conference. I've always wanted to do that. So let's talk about what actually happened and some truths. Truth one, Cambridge Analytica had very few data points on people, right? So you've heard the 5,000 data points. It's actually very few. Myth number two, weapons-grade psyops. Cambridge Analytica didn't have these magically accurate models. It is extremely difficult to predict specific people. It cannot be done. It's just fucking impossible. To argue that we can know everything there is to know about you, your inner demons, is mostly silly. Thank you so much.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry. This includes the basic responsibility of protecting people's information, which we failed to do with Cambridge Analytica.
My very basic question is, what laws did they break?
What laws did they break? Well, Cambridge Analytica were wrong to acquire Facebook user data in the way that they did. So that was a clear breach of Facebook's platform policies, and they were banned from Facebook for that reason.
I remember getting a news alert for a New York Times story. I thought back to the moment I first walked into Cambridge Analytica's office in 2015. I didn't fly to London to expose a consulting firm I'd never heard of for violating Facebook's terms of service. I frankly couldn't care less what Facebook's terms of service are.
Other than some minor administrative stuff, there hasn't been anybody who's demonstrated that the company did anything that was either illegal or breached regulations. So you have to ask yourself, well, what was missing then? What's wrong?
A lot of entities, including Facebook, were very happy to scapegoat Cambridge Analytica.
It's not enough to just give people control over their information. We need to make sure that the developers they share it with protect their information too.
To admit that we went through the front door and used legitimate means to gather the data, or to admit that we were doing something that many others were doing all the time, would open the floodgates to an attack on their fundamental business model. Who wants to undermine a $500 billion business? I might have thrown me under the bus as well.
Should we worry about how much data you have on us and how you're going to use it?
No, I don't think you should. I think that most people volunteer more data on social media and more frankly damaging data on social media than anything that we have. Our data is pretty benign.
Social media platforms take a lot of information from you. It's part of their user agreement. You don't pay for it, you use it, and they use it to sell you stuff. What's funny is all these same Americans are going down their Facebook page and saying, wow, I really like those shoes, and they buy the shoes because Facebook's learned who they are. And it saves them time. It starts to learn what kind of news it wants to read. Make your life easier. Is that manipulating you?
There's a difference between consumer products and political candidates.
Why?
I was in the Washington, D.C. office. A sunny morning, sometime in early March. I remember standing in that office overlooking the World Bank, and Aleksandr called me. And he said, Julian, we've got a problem. And I said, oh yeah, what is it this time? It wasn't the first time that I'd had a call like that from Aleksandr. He told me that he'd been set up. A potential client claimed to be interested in the election in Sri Lanka, that the meetings had all been really weird, and that the things we discussed were embarrassing. What he was discussing in that meeting was shocking to all of the staff that saw the video when it was aired. And I thought, we're not going to have a customer by the end of the month.
You can bring some Ukrainians in on holiday with us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. They are very beautiful Ukrainian girls.
They are very beautiful.
Yes.
I find that works very well.
I don't know, I remember watching them on TV or on the internet or whatever. I was just like, wow, that's dumb.
It was ridiculous. Even if Aleksandr had had the inclination to provide those sorts of services, he had no capability to do that. He would have been lost trying to provide those sort of services.
And also, if the science of psychographics was really worked out, why would they need to go hire prostitutes?
I London har folk fra en britisk datatilsynsmyndighed renset kontorer, som tilhører analysefirmaet Cambridge Analytica.
Direktøren for Cambridge Analytica er netop blevet suspenderet, og firmaet bliver altså beskyldt for at have påvirket dem.
Cambridge Analytica really became the brand name of Satanism. We were the link between the Trump campaign and the Russians. We were accused of killing staff on contract. And that, of course, when I took over as chief exec, we had both customers and suppliers ringing us up and saying they were no longer going to do business with us. There was only one thing to do, and that was to call time and put the business out of business. What a sad end, but that's life, I guess.
"2016 is the moment where we start noticing how digital tools not only don't inherently make everything better, but can make things worse. In searching for an explanation of, wait, how did reality TV star Donald Trump just get elected president? There's a sense of maybe we should look to the internet for an explanation. Oh, it's just Cambridge Analytica figured out secret data things.
Observers, journalists, academics who should be naturally suspicious, I think have been too ready to accept self-serving claims that Cambridge Analytica made when in marketing mode.
There's so much energy and attention directed at Cambridge Analytica that I think it distracts from what is, the bigger questions here. If you think that the problem's gone away because Cambridge Analytica is dead, then you're completely missing the point.
Treating Cambridge Analytica as though they had secret data sauce that no one saw but unleashed this surprising behavior absolves ourselves of the more difficult conversations. In particular, absolves political elites and media elites, journalists, of the major role that they have in this. Much more comforting for almost everyone involved.
Do you think you'll ever convince people that the Cambridge Analytica scandal isn't at all what it's been made out to be?
That's tough. I don't know with any level of accuracy of how many folks walked out of that room full of 1,000 people and thought this is all bullshit and Cambridge Analytica was 100% the explanation for Trump. Because the battle for the narrative about Cambridge Analytica has been fought and lost. Most people believe that Cambridge Analytica was directly responsible for the Trump campaign's victory. I mean, there's also just a question of, should we even bother? Because if the ultimate consequence is people care about privacy, maybe that's good enough that just take the loss on the facts on this one and accept the victory on the broader point.
How do you think what you say is a fundamental misunderstanding of the 2016 election and Cambridge Analytica's role in that? How would that affect the 2020 election?
On the Republican side, folks are very well aware that Cambridge Analytica was snake oil. On the Democrat side, I think folks give a lot more credence to Cambridge Analytica, and there's a lot of efforts being spent to try to answer it. And my view is that that's a waste of time and energy and pretty scarce resources that I think could actually undermine those campaigns.
You're saying Cambridge Analytica did not cost the Democrats the 2016 election?
But it might cost them the 2020 one.
Brad Parscale is unique among campaign managers, not only because he comes out of the digital world, but he has become a celebrity in the Trump sphere.
The left thought they had a monopoly on understanding marketing, media, and digital, and data. And when they lost that, and they had to say, the big bad wolf stole it.
But
That was a good one.
He has chosen to make himself the protagonist of the Donald Trump internet story.
You can use that one.
Real-time editing.
Well, we like to get our good ones. That was a good one.
president's going to continue to protect us with 4 more years, right? But I need everyone to do something for me. There's a little homework we have to do. And the way to do that is I need you to use your beautiful cell phone, whatever device it is, and I need you to text Trump to a number, 880-88022.
If Donald Trump wins in 2020,
in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
I think it is very likely that Brad Parscale will use that to cement the legend of Brad Parscale.
We have about 200+ million records of voter history and consumer information on Americans.
Much like Cambridge Analytica, I think Brad Parscale is going to become the object of a lot of fantasy and suspicion and fear around the Trump campaign.
It's millions of records happening daily, just website touches, rallies, merchandise purchases, coalition events, social media. And we're able to understand who it is as a Trump supporter and learn how to talk to them better, learn how to more efficiently get them out to vote, learn how to turn them into volunteers, learn how to turn them into neighborhood team leaders, and build the largest volunteer army in history. No other party, no other campaign in history has ever done anything close to it.